So regards from Vienna. This is beautiful Schönbrunn here where I'm talking, a beautiful obelisk here from historic times, the Imperial Austria. And don't worry, some of the commenters have said, who do you think you are, Franz Josef? No, I'm actually not a monarchist, and I'm actually not such a great fan of the Austrian Empire or something like that. Don't get it wrong. It's just a wonderful location to talk about peace, because there was a certain peace order tried to establish. Obviously, the Austrians were obviously always megalomaniac and tried to take over half of the Balkans and share it with the Russians in so many occasions in the 19th century. It was all not meant to be, because the military capabilities to project power was never there. So it's all history and long time ago. If you're interested, you can listen to my podcast Pax Europiana. I talk also a lot about history. But in this video, I would like to talk about peace. And peace in the Balkans, it is important that it is connected to NATO membership of Serbia. And I know that's the most problematic, and there's much resistance. I see it from many of the comments I have on my video channel, and in the past and now, since I do that since the beginning of 2020, and before already, when many occasions when I was in Serbia calling for a NATO membership, or on Twitter, it's always a lot of opposition. And I wonder why. Why actually is that? Is it not the case that Serbia was an ally of the Western powers in the First World War, fighting against Austria actually, and the terrible crimes and the terrible situation and all these terrors, and it was not the French and the British who helped Serbia? And also when you look at the Second World War, Serbia was allied with Great Britain, very much so. The Soviet Union had no access. It only came very much in the end of the war, but it was the British arms and weapons who made the partisan victory possible. It was the Cairo command, the Alexandria command of the British army, and Churchill, who deployed all the assistance towards Tito and decided for his victory, basically. I think it's very clear. And also during the Cold War, in the beginning, of course, there was a big cooperation for some years until the split, but between Tito and between Stalin, it was only 3 years. In 1948 already the love affair was over. And basically in 1951 it was already decided that Yugoslavia will be supported by the Americans. And there was the Truman decision in the beginning of 1951 to include basically Yugoslavia in the Western financial and defense system. Obviously it was not told to the Yugoslavians, but in macroeconomic terms and in security terms, it was not part of the Eastern Bloc, but more or less as a kind of client state of America. And it stayed that until Milosevic turned it into an extremist project to raise his position to power and take power from Stambolic and kill him later. And they found him in a forest, dead, some years later. That's, I think, the story of the three most important phases where Serbia and Yugoslavia was ally of the West. And why now all this is happening and all this kind of anti-NATO, anti-American, anti-Western? I wonder also why to join then the European Union, because it's the same member states. I mean, the difference between EU and NATO is minimal. When you see from the population, it's 40 million EU citizens which are not member of NATO, but 420 are member. And all newcoming are also member. It's only with Serbia that has this kind of anti-NATO feeling, and it's very much of course I understand it's connected with the war and with the Kosovo Liberation War, with the Balkan Liberation War. Unfortunately, the narrative is that we unfairly bombed Belgrade and we destroyed your bridges, but it's not true. Obviously, it's true that we attacked and that we destroyed these bridges, and also a lot of people were killed on that. But that was the answer for the genocide and for the wars against Kosovo. Everybody was warned, and it was very clear. The Western powers didn't go easily into that one. The French really didn't want it, and also the Germans were extremely hesitant. It was the escalatory scenario of massive expulsion of the Kosovo Albanians, which led to this intervention. And there was 15 moments when Milosevic could have stopped everything, and it wouldn't have happened. But he thought he's outsmarting the West, he is tougher. He thought the West will chicken out and it's impossible to use force against Yugoslavia. In his world, in his experience of the Bosnian War, he saw the world like that, and he thought he is smarter than the rest. But he was not. And I'm sorry that there was this level of escalation necessary, but everybody who thinks that we unfairly intervened or doesn't want to join NATO because of that, I really wonder your motives. Because also Germany is now in NATO since 1955 already, and also Austria should be in NATO, and everybody else as well in Europe. It's the security we have since 1949. I cannot understand this kind of anti-NATO narrative in Serbia. And it's deeply worrying for me because it's ultimately close to fascist on the one hand, but also close to some kind of extreme Russian narrative against the West. And if you are on that side, which I see also many YouTube commenters who are definitely from that direction, of a kind of 19th century pan-Slavism and kind of extreme anti-Western position, and then anyhow with this thinking, if that's the mainstream thinking in Serbia, there is no way to be in Europe, in European Union. You can obviously in Europe, it's no way to change the geography. But politically, we are Western. We are a Western unification process. We are pro-American. Maybe not everybody. There's also French and Austrian anti-Americans. But from the value system, we have taken over the American value system of freedom and democracy, and no to authoritarian kind of Russian projects. No, this was maybe under Trump. Some people thought that's entertaining, but it's not the way. And if you believe in this kind of anti-Western narrative, there is no place in Europe for that. This is for the fringe, some extremists. You have them in Austria as well. Maybe 3%, 4% of the voters. Yeah, they are very sad people, and they are stuck in the past of some kind of racist and xenophobic past. But that's not the future, and that's not the present of Europe. And there is no way to join the European Union. And I'm just more open than everybody else in telling this, because there are some who say always nice things. Yes, you can join without NATO membership. NATO is not so important. Just come to the EU and everything will be fine. And you can also do your own foreign policy in the European Union. You can vote with Russia all the time and we don't care. And it's not like that. The appetite for the next Hungarian scenario with Orban is extremely limited. And when the going gets tough and the accession will get more realistic, all these demands will come anyhow. And it's just fair to tell it to anybody who wants to listen that this is not gonna happen. It's not gonna happen. And this debate Serbia has to lead with itself in the media space, with its Western friends, and also, there is no Russian alternative to the West. It's an illusionary thing. Russia is also in decline. And the way it has gone in 2014 is absolutely long-term unsustainable and unaffordable. There is no Russian-Chinese alternative scenario to the world. Yeah? If you think like that, then again, political unification in Europe is not your thing. But then also freeze the membership, become an Eastern partner, say how much money you want, we send you some. We are generous to all our European partners, but don't become a member of a political federation, a union, which the European Union is ultimately, and we are determined to build it like that. It's the way this is going, absolutely. And there's of course many opinions, and you might believe other people, it's fine. But I tell you the facts as they are, and this is the way it is. And if there is no kind of change in Serbian policy in that important question, no application to NATO, and the whole project about European membership will dissolve itself. It will simply not happen. And that would be very sad. Sad for peace and sad for the new Serbian generation, which misses all these opportunities. And, nationalism, kind of hooliganism, kind of extreme violent football partisan. Oh, now we have some helicopter here. Yeah, something happened. Yeah, that's my story here, and I call because I really care for Serbia. I have really also many friends there and many people I met in many of my travels, and I was there from '92 on so many student protests and so many of the conferences, and I really care for Serbia and for the Serbians, and I want them to also be in NATO, to be secure, and to also understand the world as it is, yeah? And not to be in some kind of fake Russian narrative parallel universe, which I'm totally sorry when somebody believes like something like that. So that's my message here: for peace, for Serbia to join NATO, adopt the euro, conclude also a peace treaty, recognize Kosovo obviously, and be a normal European member state like Austria. It can be. In 20 years from now, Serbia will be similar like Austria. And it's already a wonderful country, but it will be also a rich, developed country with security, with Western institutions, with Western level of prosperity. And I think, given the history, that's a wonderful achievement, and there's something to work for. And we should all strive for that. So, European Serbia, welcome to NATO, adopt the euro, join the EU labor market, and also recognize Kosovo and all the attached benefits I have already outlined in the previous video. But that's my specific call for the Serbian public. Think about it. That's the way forward. Thanks. Bye from Vienna.